I did write my last album, which is called All Gathered in One Room, was a different album than anything I've ever done, which was why I made it fun. That I thought it was fun to do. It was the first album that I ever wrote all the lyrics first, ever.
Oh,
Because
interesting.
I went through a period where I wrote within 2 months. I don't know what happened. I wrote 30 poems, and I haven't written poetry since I was a kid. And for some reason, I started writing all these, and some of them are pretty crazy. Some of them are straight ahead, and some of them you wouldn't even know what I was. Uh, you wouldn't understand all the lines because they're written more like set for sound, and uh, they're almost like prog rock, which I'm not into. Type lyrics, probably influenced by Keith Reed from Procol Harum, that kind of stuff.
Okay.
And so I had to write music to it. And that was a challenge because I didn't want to change the meter of the poems, because they'd be, you
Uh-huh.
could read them as poems,
Yeah.
with that da 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 da.
Right.
Oh, that could make the music very tedious. So I had to sort of break up the lines musically, uh, make them sound like they uh weren't like that. You don't want the melody to keep going. I never
Right. So redundant.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Uh, so I don't know if you got to that album, but
Not, yeah, I have not yet, but
yeah,
now
that
that you
you'll
give
see
me
what I
background,
mean.
it'll be cool to listen to
And
that.
that title song, "All Gathered in One Room," is a takeoff on a Gilbert and Sullivan type thing, like one of those patter songs. And um, and also I was watching a lot of TCM, a lot of old movies,
Okay.
and that influenced that. And Michael plays drums on some of the 7 of those songs, and
Okay.
does a killer lead guitar on one of them, and plays bass on one of them. And it's very hard to get them on it. You know, uh, they had no time, and I had to like torture them into playing on them.
Well,
So
you,
it's not even easy for me. Sometimes I'll have people will message me and say, "Do you think the kids could play on this?" And I said, "I can't even get them to play on my own stuff, and I'm their father." No,
yeah. Uh, what what early so going back to what I touched on at the very beginning was seeing that video of Michael on drums, and I think
mm,
Brian was on keyboards for Wild Honey.
yeah,
Uh,
and I was on bass in the background, as
okay, yeah, because I heard your voice. So what age did they start? Was when did they start? And is that something you inspired them to do and kind of helped them down that path, or was that did they find that inspiration by themselves?
well, I kind of indoctrinated them early on. I mean, they always heard. First of all, they grew up listening to my stuff a lot because I was always recording.
Yeah.
And they listen to me like they listen to somebody they don't know, because they grew up with that. And but they grew up with me playing the Beatles and the Beach Boys, and uh they watched Yellow Submarine, um which I heard George Harrison say, when they ask him about his son getting into the Beatles, he says, "Well, there's some point in every kid's life where they watch Yellow Submarine." And his son came to him one day and said, "How do you play Hey Bulldog?" or something. Oh, out of nowhere. He knew that his father was a Beatle. But anyway, so playing Yellow Submarine, they were really heavily into the Beatles anthology. I have videos of them standing in front of the TV set, making believe they're playing guitar, which is incredible because I did the same thing.
Mhm.
It was like watching myself grow up because they were into all the same stuff. The weirdest thing is it was the same stuff. It wasn't
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
they were listening to what was happening in their own period, which they did listen to. Cage the Elephant and My Chemical Romance and stuff that was going on when they were kids, but they were also listening to The Who, which I never got them into. They got into The Who by themselves. I definitely got them into the Beatles and the Beach Boys, which are their favorites, but they were obsessed with The Who. Uh, and they eventually, and they loved the Kinks and the Dave Clark Five, uh, Birds, Love and Spoonful, and all that stuff. Um, but eventually, they dropped all the bands that were their own generation. The kids
Okay.
that were, I guess they felt that the stuff that they were into in the 60s held up better for them.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, and that's what became their bigger influences. Um, Michael, they went through their glam period where Michael was into Lou Reed and Bowie, which I never got them into.
It shows that, yeah, it shows in some of their earlier work for sure.
Yes, yes, especially Michael.
Yeah.
Um, and but now Michael seems to be doing closer to what Brian does now. They seem to be more into that real pop rock thing, like their last two albums, which I think are great, Endless Harmony and oh, what's the A Dream Is All We Know. Like sometimes I can't distinguish between Brian and Michael's songs anymore. They're so similar now. And Michael's gotten so much more sophisticated. When they did their first album, when they were signed to 4AD, he was 15, like Carl Wilson.
Hmm.
Um, so he was doing very well for 15, writing some good songs, and he's just gotten better and better. Um, and they also both took classical guitar. Michael didn't so much stick with it, but Brian did. He's an amazing classical guitar player.
Oh,
And so he actually, Brian at this point, uh, can actually write it and read it a little bit because you have to be able to do that somewhat to play classical pieces.
yeah.
He had a teacher, so you can't learn that on your own. You have to learn that properly. And he'll write out string arrangements for them. And
Oh, wow.
I think I think, Brian Wilson would try to do that, but he would get things wrong. They'd have to change it, putting the staff on the wrong side and stuff. I think Brian tried, but he was more like McCartney. They were more like McCartney always expressed a desire to be able to do that until, like you said before, he was a little scared of getting too educated,
Mhm.
because he said like people like Carl Davis or George Martin who know so much um, might think, oh, I can't do that. That's been done so many times before. So they discard everything they write. Whereas, people that don't know so much, it's like a discovery. And that discovery could inspire you uh, to do things beyond what, but it certainly didn't hinder Burt Bacharach. That
That's
guy is a monster.
oh my gosh, yes.
And he was very educated. So,
So
uh,
funny to me. I discovered the naked eyes, something always something there to remind me in the 80s. And I had no clue that that was a Bacharach tune until years.
yeah, yeah, I like the original better than that.
I
But
do now too, now that I've discovered it. Yeah.
But yeah, Backrack is incredible. In fact, I think Brian Wilson, I've I've heard him go back and forth between Paul and Backrack in terms of who he likes the most.
So I'm curious, is Michael and Brian's mother musical?
Yes, she's a really good singer, Susan, and she has a great ear for harmony, especially for somebody who's not a musician. There's certain people that are born with a gift of harmony and they can hear a harmony. There's some musicians that play and know what they're doing chord wise, but they get thrown when they have to sing a harmony.
Yeah.
Um, they just weren't born with that natural ability. They could they could get better. Uh, I think if you know what you're doing chord wise, you don't have to be like musically educated, but you if you have an ear and you know what chords, like all those guys that like McCartney and Brian Wilson and those guys, they might not be educated in theory, and I'm the same way, and the kids are the same way, but they know what they're doing.
Yeah, right.
They know what chords are happening and the voicings and things like that. So that does help if you have to remember a part. Uh, Besides your natural ability to sing harmony that you're born with, being a musician does help if you have to remember a note, live or something. You know that it's the third you have to go to. You know what that means in your head. It's not just that you're naturally feeling it. You're doing both. So it helps to like there's certain people that uh you've heard people that can't even hold a tune, carry a tune. That always amazes me. Most people can. Most people are able to sing a tune, but
Yeah.
some people have no idea. They sing exactly where their range is, and they don't reach for the note. They just go, "Oh, that's the highest note I can hit." And there's some people that aren't uh, born with the ability to play drums or hit or rhythm, weren't born with rhythm. They can take as many lessons as they want. They can do technical stuff because they've been taught it, but they can't hold the beat. Susan has a natural ear, and but she would have to be. She would, if she was singing harmony to somebody, she'd go in the direction of where the melody is, and she might get a wrong note because the chord does a trick.
Right. Okay.
But she'd be able to compensate if she practiced it.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, she plays a little bit of chords, like, you know, three chords on the guitar. She tries a little bit with piano. Uh, I guess it didn't interest her to become a musician, but she could have been very musical. She's an actress. Good actor.
Okay.
Yeah. And she taught the boys some harmony too. There's a great video of her with Brian and Michael when they were little kids on the bed and trying to get Brian to sing the melody and trying to get Michael to stay on his note. Sometimes when you sing harmony, you hear the melody and your natural instinct is go to the melody. All of a
Yeah.
sudden, leave the harmony. And so she's trying to teach him to stay on the harmony. And at the end of it, he goes, "Can I have my Mountain Dew now?" It's a
I
very,
I love the well that's what made me crack up at the end of the Wild Honey video. They were running up the stairs, and I think it's
oh, yeah.
Michael who stops and he comes back down and says, "Don't do drugs."
Right,
He
right,
goes
right.
back up the
Yeah, and they're going, "Stay handsome."
stairs.
Uh, and when they're playing, and Brian does like throws in I don't know, either throws in some harmony or a lead or does something to the piano. Michael, you can't hear it, but you hear Michael go off mic and say, "You're gay." And at one point he goes,
Awesome.
point he goes, "Fuck you," you know.
Well, that
Yeah.
is for you. I'm one of three, so I get that.
Oh,
Very
they're funny as hell, man. They've always been funny. They were great actors. They were on Broadway. Michael did films and they did TV shows. Uh, yeah, have you ever checked out any of those, like People Like Us that Michael did? It's a movie with uh, Michelle Pfeiffer, and he had a big role in it too. Uh, I can't think of Chris Pine, Elizabeth
okay.
Banks, and those people. Yeah, you should check out People Like Us. He was 11. Uh,
Wow.
and so they're very, very talented actors and very funny. and they're into all the same comedy that they love the Marx Brothers.
I've got a an Animal Crackers poster over on the
Uh,
wall framed. Oh my gosh. I think my well, Duck Soup is so great in its own right. I think if I had to choose one, it's Monkey Business,
uh,
because that's the one point where we actually get to hear Harpo, because they're in the barrels and they're singing Sweet Adeline, all
oh, really?
four-part harmony. Yes,
Oh, wow.
yes. It's the
Wow.
only time.
I didn't know that. See, you know that you know all that inside Beach Boy stuff and now Marx Brothers stuff.
Yes, it's oh man, I absolutely adore the Marx Brothers.
Yeah, Marx Brothers are great, and they're into Jerry Lewis, even though he wasn't such a nice guy. That's a thing where you have to separate.
Yeah.
Uh, and
He was Jerry Lewis, though, was responsible that he affected the film industry to this day, because he created
video monitor.
the little monitor. Yeah. That's so yeah, it's
Oh,
incredible.
speaking of, you were talking about sometimes not being so educated can uh, be even better for you. A perfect example, since we're talking about movies, is Citizen Kane, where Orson Welles didn't know anything about anything. He didn't know it couldn't be done.
That's
And he depended on Greg Tolan, a great cameraman, for the technical stuff. And, nobody told him that you couldn't dig a hole and shoot from the bottom a scene, and all these shadows that he used from his experience in lighting plays. He lit the sets like he would do plays.
okay.
And then he said that, and for the first 3 days, he was doing that by himself until he learned that there were light people to do that. And
Wow.
he had to apologize. And they said, no, no, let him keep going, do what he wants.
I didn't realize that. Oh, okay, I'll have to go back and watch that now.
Oh my God, that's a great. I mean, I don't have to say it. Everyone thinks it's. A lot of people think it's the best movie ever made.
It certainly was a pivotal moment in film history in terms of creating uh, a different way to look at films. I mean, it yeah, it's significant. It's significant. It's on the Mount Rushmore of
Yeah,
movies.
and
You know,
the poor guy, what he went through to try to raise money to, Citizen Kane was the only movie that he had enough finance behind that the studio let him do what he wanted and gave him as much money as he needed. He never had that again. And then all his other movies got butchered. The like Magnificent Andersons, they shot the ending. They changed the ending while he was away in Europe filming for World War II, and whatever he had to do to film a propaganda movie for the U.S. And while he was away, they changed his whole movie, and he had that his whole life.
Hi, this is Al Jardine, and if you're looking for a great publication on the history of the Beach Boys, check out Endless Summer Quarterly magazine. Thanks, ESQ, for all your years of support.
You're younger than me. So when did you get into the Beach Boys?
I through Jan and Dean. I saw.
Oh, I saw your interview with Dean, uh,
Okay,
and there were other people there.
yes, that was for the oh, I can't Joe the Farina yeah, that's been a few years back. Yeah, so Dean's been a mentor of mine. Dean and I actually did this Beach Boys tour program together. And the same year, that's
Funny.
2016, 50 years of good vibrations. And then we did that hardcover coffee table book together. But that, so I designed them and he created the VW Volkswagen Bug graphic and the lettering and everything for it.
He's
So that,
very funny.
what's that?
Gene is very funny, always
Oh
has
my
been.
gosh, he very acerbic humor, just very
Yeah, yeah. I noticed.
dry.
I noticed in the interview, he said something like, "All right, so what kind of maniacal fandom are we involved with here?" Or something like that.
Yes, I inter my when I started the magazine in August of '93, my first interview was with him,
Hmm.
and it took a couple of years. I think it was '95, and he finally said to me on the phone, "So what level of lunatic are you?"
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah. Oh, I wrote a song with Steve Kalinich. It's on my Egg Yolks and Artichokes album. Turn It Around One Day, it's called.
Okay.
Turn It Around One Day. A little bit of a Motownish kind of production. Uh, but yeah, you should listen to it. I like the way that came out. Um,
Stevie, great.
Stevie. Yeah, pretty good artist too. I saw see his stuff, he posts. Um, what? Oh, I was gonna say, guess I'm dumb. I always thought that Glenn Campbell thing that Brian produced was Brian trying to do a little bit of a Bacharach thing. Uh,
I can hear that.
yeah, kind of the meter of the notes and stuff. Uh,
Yeah. Oh.
if he was trying, but it sounded a little bit like that.
Well, that song should have been on Pet Sounds, but
Oh, it was at the period it was done in?
yes.
Oh, okay.
The first session that I'm aware of was October of '64, and it was released in June of '65. And I mean, I could just see the conversation. I don't know that it went like this, but I could just see Brian saying to Mike, "What do you think of Guess I'm Dumb? We can't tell the Beach Boy fans that we're dumb." I could just, see
You
something.
know what's funny? Another thing about Mike, right? Now, he says that he was always very supportive of Smile, right? But I have a cassette. I've never seen it on YouTube anymore, or if I ever did. I have a cassette of him doing a mock commercial in the studio of him, and in the background, it's either heroes and villains or
I think it's Heroes and Villains.
and some of the thing where he has a toilet flushing sound effect, and he goes, "That's the sound of my career going down the toilet." It's kind of funny but obnoxious, because Mike is funny, but he's obnoxious when he's funny.
Yeah,
I could see him being worried about
sure.
the kind of music that Brian was making, the fact that he wasn't finishing things, that he was recording things in sections. And,
Mhm.
looking at it from the outside, you go, what the hell is he doing? And you can see that the sections are really nice.
Yeah,
But he's not doing things in a normal way, or I guess from Mike's point of view, in a commercial way. People put down Mike for always thinking commercially, but I think that that's a help too. That helps
absolutely.
Brian stuff together.
The only thing I say about well, my favorite Beach Boys recording is Cabin Essence.
Well, that's see that I don't know if Mike would appreciate that.
It's just that's just the way that music moves me. And Cabin Essence to me is it's not about who wrote it. When I heard it for the first time on the 2020 album,
Yep.
having no idea it was associated with Smile, um, I heard it and it immediately struck me like I was listening to a painting of the American, like Norman Rockwell. It's like I felt like I was listening to Freedom from Want by Norman Rockwell. Like it was this great, colorful tapestry, and I still feel that way to this day. That it's getting to listen to American history sung by the Beach Boys, and it to me is just such a significant moment in my discovery of the group and my experience of them. Just that those voices are doing that. That their
It's
voices at
nice.
one point are the steam coming out of the engine of the train.
And there's some nice melody in that too, like that. Da 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 da
Yeah,
da 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 da. There's some nice parts in that. Sometimes there are things that that don't have to be so clear. I mean, commercial songwriting is when you're writing a song and you do want people to understand it, and it takes work sometimes to get across the thoughts that you want to get it across. And if it's that type of song, you do that. But then there's other types of lyric writing that is just as legit. He might watch this, and I want to say, Mike, I love you. I'm not in the Mike love hate.
Oh, either am I. I have one son. He's 23. His name's Ethan. He's a young man with Down syndrome. And when I took Ethan to his first Beach Boys show in July of 2014, Stamos was there, and Stamos and the group treated, I mean, you would have thought Ethan was a king. The treatment they gave him, it was like, red carpet. I mean, they brought him on stage for Barbara Ann. It's
Did
so,
you say nephew or nephew or
oh,
what? Who?
this is my son.
Oh, your son. Because
Yeah.
my wife's brother, who's passed away, he had Down syndrome. I went to see Good Vibrations on Broadway,
Yeah.
and it happened to be a night that Brian was there.
Okay.
So we came on stage and stuff. And then we waited for him at the stage door, and we got to get his autograph and shake his hand. Uh, and then as Melinda, uh, as Brian was getting in the car, then Melinda followed. My wife said, "Please take care of Brian." And I gave her one of these, and it is Melinda, right?
Yeah, Melinda. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sure.
okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was thinking Melania. Anyway.
That one's better.
And I
Oh,
had an experience in the 70s. I guess the Beach Boys had something to do with CBS. I think, were they on their label for a while or
yes,
Caribou?
they were in the late 70s, 79.
I was going up the elevator in the CVS building on 52nd and 6th Avenue. Uh, uh, the door opens on one of the floors, and Mike Love, Al Jardine, and Dennis Wilson get in. And I'm going, and this is when I was like, just got into them, and or a little later. And I went, oh my God, I love you guys. And they were all very nice. Uh, Mike was like nice and polite, and Al was nice. Dennis was the nicest person in the world. And then I get off the floor, get off the elevator, do what I have to do at CVS, come back, and they come out of the elevator again.
Oh, wow.
And Dennis like puts his arm around me and starts talking to me. He was just so nice, so warm, which I hear that's the way he was. Uh, so that was an odd experience, a nice experience. And I went to see Carl when he went solo at the Bottom Line, and he was always wearing that black jacket, and and I said to him, you wait, and he comes out afterwards,
Mhm.
and I said, I want you to have my cassette. I've always wanted to give you this. And he puts it in his pocket and he goes, now I have it. That was it.
Carl was, I never met Dennis. It's interesting. When I interviewed Daryl Dragon, he had said that it was the early 80s and Dennis was still touring with him, that Daryl came to a show and he walked right past Dennis and he didn't recognize him. Um, and that took me back to hear that Dennis stopped him and said, Daryl, but he walked right past him. And that's must have been weird. Because Daryl was so close to Dennis in the early 70s. They wrote those songs together.
Yeah.
Daryl was like Salieri was to Mozart. Daryl Dragon was to Dennis Wilson. He's uncredited on Let's Go Near the Water. That whole thing is Daryl Dragon.
Don't Go Near the Water.
Yes.
I thought that was Michael Love and Al Jardine.
It's written, but Daryl's uncredited. He came up with the whole music that ending,
Oh yeah,
that
acapella part,
yeah,
harmonic.
Daryl came up with that. He came up with the bridge. He came up with the beginning. Um, Al talks about that all the time, that Daryl just wasn't credited. And Daryl was a significant, he would sit at the piano with Dennis when Dennis would be writing anything. And Daryl would take the notes, because the problem with Dennis was he would come back to the piano and he would just write for mood and how he felt, and just
Yeah.
because he would just,
His songs were always kind of meandering. It was
yeah,
wherever, whatever his fingers would hit on the keyboard,
yes,
and he would actually go on for a while without having much structure as a
yeah,
verse and things. But he would just play these things that were kind of pretty and,
yeah. And so Daryl would write down what he was doing so that when they went to record, they would have the structure. And typically Daryl would be the one doing the recording, because he would just write down what Dennis had put together.
yeah.
So if not for Daryl, I don't we wouldn't have had the opportunity, I don't think, to hear those songs as they were intended. But Daryl's such a fan of Dennis's, he said, like Forever that they wrote together, told me, he says, I don't think Forever needed all the strings and all that extra stuff on it. It was better as just Dennis on piano.
What always uh uh, what always bothered me a little bit, I guess in a similar way with Forever, were all those uh improvised Beach Boy things in the background where they were doing all these bluesy things.
Yeah,
I always thought it was distracting. Um, you know the parts I mean, right? Like,
yes, and that's
oh
what Daryl was
yeah,
referring to.
that kind
Yeah,
of these things.
yeah, that's what Daryl was referring to. He didn't think any of that was needed. He
Well, we'll have to remix it.
There you go. I
They're
did.
remixing
I do
everything
think
else.
Steve Jesper did a fantastic job with the Sunflower and Surf's Up albums. Those are great great works.
Well, you know what I love also? A few years ago, they remixed Summer Days and Summer Nights into stereo,
uh,
and uh, I think Beach Boys today, uh,
yes.
they did four of them. Uh, and I loved hearing them in stereo. They sound great, those albums. Um, and I noticed that on one of them, they have the voices are all in the center, but all the instruments are in stereo, which it means they must have recorded it a certain way. And on the other album, it's completely the opposite, where the voices are all in stereo and the instruments are in the middle. So
Hmm.
they must have been had the tracks kind of recorded in that way, and that's
Yeah.
of course of course nowadays with that Mal software that Peter get back uh Peter, come on, the director,
Oh, Jackson? No.
Peter Jackson,
Yeah, okay.
that he only lets the Beatles have, where they could actually now take a mono mix of instruments and not only separate the drums and the bass, but they could separate parts of the actual drum set. Now, if anyone wanted to bother for the 90th mix, um, they could just have everything on separate tracks, maybe. I don't know. I don't know how far that goes. But I just thought that those releases were great. I wanted to ask you something that I've never heard anybody talk about. Those tracks on Smiley Smile that never became part of Smile, like With Me Tonight and Little Pad. Where did those things come from, and why were they not part of Smile? Uh,
Well, they were just created once Brian decided to do the Smiley Smile album. Those were created um, just from that moment. I think from like July. I think he did most of the album in July of '67. Um, and it was just, and you know that Baldwin organ, which basically controls that whole record, was a gift from his father. Um, so I often wonder when I listen to Smiley Smile if it wasn't Brian's attempt to almost like a love letter to his dad, because even though his dad was kind of a dick, I still think he was wanting his father's approval. So I often wonder when I listen to that record if that was Brian's attempt to
Yeah,
maybe
but was
impress his father.
were those songs just created for Smiley Smile and never
Yes,
intended to be
yes,
part of the Smile album?
correct.
Oh, okay.
Same is true with like Can't Wait Too Long, which he started during that same period, worked on it quite a bit in the fall of '67, and then let it go for a while. But he had recorded sections just like he had done for Vegetables and like he had done for Heroes and Villains. And it's Smile is so great. It's unfortunate because they had 75% of the record done by time Good Vibrations was released in October of '66. And then Capitol wanted another single. So he went to work on Heroes and Villains, and that consumed most of his time from that point on to what was it, April? No, no. April timeline, because then right at the same time he started working on Vegetables. And he did the same thing. He then devoted time to Vegetables. He was so upset with Capitol Records because they're in litigation that he just decided, oh, I'll put Vegetables out next. And it was David Leaf recently when I did my Zoom interview with him about his new book, the Smile book that he's got out. That
Yeah.
Brian's concern was nobody was going to, nobody, the label or the guys, and I think the guys would have just accepted whatever he was doing. Whether they were outspoken about it or not, they still would have accepted what he was doing, because you listen to any of the Smile sessions, everyone's vocal is on that stuff, including Mike's.
Yeah.
They would come back from touring, Brian would say, this is what we're doing, and they would do it. So whether or not Mike was in support of Van Dyke's lyrics or whatever, he was still on all those recordings. So I think they would have just, so Brian said, David Leaf said that Brian told him that he just didn't think that people were going to give him a year to complete what he wanted to do with Smile. And I had not heard that before, but it makes sense because, it took him 5 months or so to do Good Vibrations. And if you ask Al Jardine thinks that Good Vibrations should have been on Pet Sounds because he thought it was done.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to think of before. I knew there was something. Yeah, I heard that recently. Imagine Good Vibrations on Pet Sounds.
Yeah, I know. Well, Bruce Johnston told me, well, how did he put it? He said,
It's like having Penny Lane and Strawberry Fields on Sergeant Pepper.
yes. So he said, or on Revolver.
Well, it was recorded for Sergeant Pepper, those two.
That's right. They were going to do an album about their childhood where they grew up. So they had Yellow Submarine, they had Penny Lane, Strawberry Fields Forever, and then they were going to write more songs about all the different locations around that area.
Well, that I didn't know. I just heard George Martin saying that he thought that those two songs should be on Sergeant Pepper.
That would have been even more stellar. But Bruce said to me, imagine if Sloop John B had been on Summer Days, and then Good Vibrations had been on Pet Sounds. He said we'd be in a different conversation. He said Beach Boys would have been on a different stratosphere if those things had happened. Yeah. I suppose so. But they were in such a hurry. That's when I look back at those records. 12 albums in 4 years is just kind of mind blowing.
It was 12 albums in 4 years.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow.
And in '63 they released, what are the two records? Surfer Girl and Little Deuce Coupe 3 weeks apart. 3 weeks.
Little Deuce Coupe, is that the 32 thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so confusing. Volume 2, that album, so confusing. Because there
Are you thinking of Shutdown?
Yeah, Shutdown. There was a volume 1, but it had like Robert Mitchum on it or something.
Yes, it was a Capitol Records idea, and they took a couple of songs by the Beach Boys. They took Shutdown and 409, I think, and put those on the record it was a compilation.
Yeah.
And so the Beach Boys, an early I think February of '64 released Shut Down Volume 2 because they were kind of pissed off at the label for doing that. That wasn't their decision. So that the album title, I think, was their kind of middle finger to the label for having done that.
I thought that was very confusing.
I think, yeah, it is.
So I had asked you before, but we went off on something else about when you got into the Beach Boys in '93.
And no, I started doing the magazine in '93. So I discovered that music through the Jan and Dean TV movie Dead Man's Curve. And so the early '80s, I think it was on CBS or, one of the three networks, NBC, ABC, or CBS, as like the Monday night movie or something.
Yeah.
The thing that got me in that movie, I mean, I liked all the music that they were doing, but there's a scene where Bruce Davidson, who played Dean, and Richard Hatch, the Battlestar Galactica Richard Hatch, played Jan, and they're standing at the foot of the ocean with their surfboards, like they're ready to get in. Jan says to Dean, "This would sound so great on tape." And Dean goes, "What?" He said, "This. It would sound so great on tape." And he goes, "What?" And they cut right to a montage of surfers riding the waves and Jan and Dean in the studio recording the song Surfing. So while you're watching this footage of surfing, actual surfers, you're also seeing them singing "Surfing is the only like the," and that's what got me. It was that moment in the film. And again, back then there was no Google, so I didn't even have a Jan and Dean record. And I went out and bought the Jan and Dean anthology album, which was a 2-record set. And it had the great booklet inside written by Dave Marsh of Cream magazine, and it had all this stuff in history. So that's when I became aware of Brian was. I already knew, I think I had a Best of the Beach Boys record through Columbia or RCA Record Club. So I knew some of their songs, but I wasn't really listening to them per se. I just listened to whatever's on the radio. But when I got the Jan and Dean 2-record set, it was 3 sides of these studio recordings in chronological order, and then the 4th side was an abridged concoction of their version of Filet of Soul, which sound effects of cars crashing, cows mooing, machine guns going off, burps, and all sorts of stuff. But it was those songs. Then I read about Brian, and then I did look at the credits in that album because of what the booklet said. And then I said, "Oh, Brian wrote this. He wrote this. He wrote Surf City. He did this. And I went, okay.
You wrote Dead Man's Curve?
Yeah, with Roger Christian and Jan. So I was like, okay, I needed to know. I want to know now. I want to know more about Brian Wilson and the Beach Boys, and so that's what pointed me in their direction. And when I started buying their records, I bought the Warner Brothers twofers. So the ones that came in beige jackets, I bought Smiley Smile, which was paired with Friends or something, and then Wild Honey was paired with 2020 or something to that effect. And
I have all those. Yeah.
Yeah, it was just this generic girl on the front cover in front of a palm tree, and you opened it up and it was a Woody. And so I didn't have the original artwork. I was just looking at the songs, and I remember putting on Smiley Smile again, thinking Beach Boy hits, and I got Endless Summer, so I had that. But it was when I remember hearing Smiley Smile for the first time and saying, "What am I listening? This can't be the beat. This has to be wrong. No wonder it's in a beige jacket. This is not the Beach Boys." And I pulled it out and I looked at it and I said, "This is what's going on here? What is this?" Because when it got to the "She's Going Bald," I just thought something. I liked it though, because the 4th side of the Jan and Dean 2-record set, this weird concoction thing I told you about, had Dead Man's Curve sped up. So when I heard "She's Going Bald" sped up, it reminded me of that, and I just thought of it as from the standpoint of humor. I didn't think about it from the psychedelic standpoint. I didn't think, I just thought about, oh, this is the same type of thing, just being silly. And then when I got, I think an early album by the group that I really responded to and liked the most was All Summer Long, because that's where I felt like I heard something cohesive in terms of a template, a style.
It's
Uh,
a whole album. It's like each song is awesome, and as a whole album, it's awesome.
yeah, exactly. And I thought, oh, this is a great summer record. And so I don't remember at what point I had Pet Sounds, but I remember I went to the because of that was one of the early records I bought too was Pet Sounds. I remember listening to it and not really responding to it. I remember I think it was on the first side. Maybe Slip John B didn't even stand out to me. I think it was not That's Not Me, but
Oh, the one that You Still Believe in Me is beautiful. That one got
it
me.
was none of the slower stuff. Nothing. No, Wouldn't It Be Nice didn't stand out to me. It didn't click. And then years later, I was in my car driving and I had the Pet Sounds cassette, and I was in my early 20s, and I'm driving along, and it hit me like
Kind of bricks.
like a flood. I mean, I was just driving along, and Wouldn't It Be Nice came on, and then I think it was when Don't Talk came on. Don't Talk, Put Your Head on My Shoulder, and
Yeah.
all of a sudden I just went, holy shit! And it just the whole experience of it just washed over me, and it was that from that point on that that was before 85. So in 85, Malcolm Leo's An American Band comes out, and what he did in that documentary that was so important for me is two things. One, when he was doing Pet Sounds, he didn't use God Only Knows, he didn't use Wouldn't It Be Nice, he didn't use Sloop John B. He used Here Today in that footage. And so he uses the bump, ba-dum,
Mm.
ba-dum, dun 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 dun. And that's the music he's using as they're starting to talk about Pet Sounds, which for me kind of elevated my response to it because it wasn't the standard music that typically every other documentary, when they get the Pet Sounds, it's I Just Wasn't Made for These Times, or maybe it's Caroline No, it's typically God Only Knows, or Wouldn't It Be Nice. That documentary did it differently. And then when it got to Smile, Malcolm cleverly took the Good Vibrations promotional film footage where they're all wearing the fire hats at the fire station and everything, and he put it with the fire music. And which again, I went, okay, wow, okay. And I didn't know better at the time. I didn't realize it was from Good Vibrations. But I just, that got me so interested in the footage he had of Brian in the studio with the fire hat on, where it's very clear he's tripping on acid. I just went, okay, I'm interested. I got to know more. I really got to know more. So that's kind of my Jan and Dean based
American
on
bands.
foam. Yeah.
Yeah, I always liked an American band, even with that corny thing where they're all like Mike's walking along talking, in his Mike way of walking.
Oh yeah.
And,
Yeah. Down on the beach. Yeah.
uh, and Bruce, I had to fit into a size whatever
Yeah.
pants.
Al's pants.
It was so corny, but it was great. I liked it. Mike apparently didn't. I saw recently where Mike said he didn't like that uh,
Oh,
video. Yeah, I was surprised. Um, and I like it at the last scene where you see them in the concert, and it's from their backs of them about to, and then the thing freezes. You know, I thought that was
yeah.
fun.
Malcolm.